Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Astotara Satashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Maharaj Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Before I start, I just wanted to say that on Sundays, there's someone who comes who turns on all the lights in the front. It only happens on Sunday. So whoever you are, please only don't turn on. Just there are 2 lights on in the shoe area. We don't need all those lights on. So whoever it is, I don't know if that person is here, but it's someone who comes on Sunday. We should not be wasting Krishna's Lakshmi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11. We have to cover text 12 to 14. The text we will discuss is text 14, so I will read 12, and then and 13, and then I'll talk about 14. So text 12. Sarva bhuta surikshanto jnana vignana nishchaya pashyan mad atmakam vishwam na vipadyeta vai punaha. Would somebody like to read the translation? Thank you.
Who is peaceful and firmly fixed in knowledge and realization, sees me within all things. Such a person never again falls down into the cycle of birth and death. Hare Krishna.
Then text 13. Shri Sukha Vacha iti id adishto bhagavata mahabhagavato nipa uddhava pranipatyaha tattvam jignashurachyutam. Someone can read the translation.
Sri Shukadev Goswami said, O King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, thus instructed his pure devotee Uddhava, who was eager to receive knowledge from the Lord. Uddhava then offered obeisances to the Lord and spoke as follows.
Someone can read the purport.
Uddhava is described here as tattvam jigyasu, or desiring to know the truth. It is clear from previous verses that Sri Uddhava is a pure devotee of Lord Krishna, and that he considers devotional service to Lord Krishna to be the perfection of life. Thus, the words tattvam jigyasu indicate that since Lord Krishna is about to leave the earth, Uddhava is most anxious to deepen his understanding of the Lord, so that he may further advance in loving service at the Lord's lotus feet. Unlike an ordinary philosopher or scholar, a pure devotee is not eager to acquire knowledge for personal gratification.
In text 14, we will do this one. Speak and respond. Shri Uddhava Vacha Yogesha Yoga Vinyasa Yogatman Yoga Sambhava Nishreyasaya me proktas Tyaga Sanyasa Lakshanaha. Shri Uddhava Vacha Yogesha Yoga Vinyasa Yogatman Yoga Sambhava Nishreyasaya me proktas Tyaga Sanyasa Lakshanaha. Shri Uddhava Vacha Yogesha Yoga Vinyasa Yogatman Yoga Sambhava Nishreyasaya me proktas Tyaga Sanyasa Lakshanaha. Please chant. Shri Uddhava Vacha Yogesha Yoga Vinyasa Yogatman Yoga Sambhava Nishreyashaya me proktas Tyaga Sanyasa Lakshanaha. Shri Uddhava Vacha Yogesha Yoga Vinyasa Yogatman Yoga Sambhava Nishreyasya me proktas Tyaga Sannyasa Lakshanaha. Shri Uddhava Vacha. Yogesha Yoga Vinyasa. Yogatman Yoga Sambhava. Nishreyasaya me proktas. Tyaga Sannyasa Lakshanaha. Shri Uddhava Vacha. Yogesha Yoga Vinyasa. Yogatman Yoga Sambhava. Nishreyasaya me proktas. Tyaga Sannyasa Lakshanaha. Shri Uddhava Vacha. Yogesha Yoga Vinyasa. Yogatman Yoga Sambhava. Nishreyasaya me proktas. Tyaga Sannyasa Lakshanaha. We'll do the word for word. Shri Uddhava Uvacha. Shri Uddhava said, Yoga Isha, O giver of all results of yoga. Yoga Vinyasa, O you who by your own power bestow yoga even upon those who are unqualified. Yoga Atman, O Supreme Soul realized through yoga. Yoga Sambhava, O origin of all mystic power. Nishreyasaya, for the ultimate benefit. Me, it's me, sorry, me, of me. Proktaha, you have spoken about. Tyagaha, renunciation. Sannyasa, by the acceptance of the order of sannyas. Lakshanaha, characterized. Translation by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Shri Uddhava said, My dear Lord, you alone award the results of yoga practice, and you are so kind that by your own influence you distribute the perfection of yoga to your devotee. Thus, you are the Supreme Soul who is realized through yoga, and it is you who are the origin of all mystic power. For my supreme benefit, you have explained the procedure for giving up the material world through the process of sannyas or renunciation. Someone can read the purport.
The word Yogesha here indicates that the Supreme Personality of Godhead awards the results of all yoga practices. Since all of the material and spiritual worlds emanate from the transcendental body of Krishna, there is nothing to be achieved by any yoga process except Krishna and his potencies. And since the Lord remains eternally the master of his potencies, no one can achieve anything through yoga or any other spiritual or material process except by the sanction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word yoga means linking up, and unless we link ourselves with the absolute truth, we remain covered by the darkness of ignorance. Thus, Krishna is the goal of yoga. In the material world, we falsely try to link ourselves with the objects of the senses. Man wants to link with woman, and woman wants to link with man. Or one tries to link up with nationalism, socialism, capitalism, or innumerable other creations of the illusory energy of the Lord. Since we are linking ourselves to temporary objects, the relationships are temporary, the results are temporary, and at the time of death we become bewildered, when all of our connections are suddenly cut off by Maya. If we link ourselves to Krishna, however, our relationship with him will continue even after death. As explained in Bhagavad Gita, the relationship with Krishna that we develop in this life will continue to increase in our next life until we achieve the supreme goal of entering Krishna's planet. Those who sincerely serve the mission of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, following the transcendental lifestyle prescribed by the Lord, will enter the Lord's abode at the end of this lifetime. One can never achieve a permanent situation by mental speculation, and what to speak of by ordinary material sense gratification. By the methods of Hatha Yoga, Karma Yoga, Raja Yoga, Jnana Yoga, etc., one does not actually awaken his propensity for rendering eternal loving service to the personality of Godhead. Thus, one is bereft of the transcendental taste of spiritual enjoyment. Sometimes the conditioned soul, disgusted by his failure to gratify his senses, bitterly decides to renounce the material world and merge into an impersonal, painless transcendence. But our actual happy situation is to render loving service at the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead. All of the different yoga processes gradually lead one to love of Godhead, and it is Lord Krishna's aim to re-establish the conditioned souls in this happy position. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is making this perfection easily available through the chanting of the holy name of Krishna, the supreme yoga process for this age.
Thank you. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitantam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhescha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Tamal Krishna Goswamiti Namine Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. So text 12 that we read describes the position of an Uttama Adhikari, one who's a well-wisher to all living beings, peaceful and firmly fixed in knowledge, and sees the Lord within all living entities. And such a person, Krishna says, never falls down into the cycle of birth and death. Then Sukadeva Goswami goes on to say that Uddhava realized that the Lord is leaving, so then he wanted to know the truth. And he wanted to know this path of devotional service to the Lord, and therefore he's described as Tattva Jignashu. And then we come to the verse for today, which is describing yoga. So what do we understand by yoga? What is yoga? How do we normally say, what does it mean? Yoga means?
To link.
To link. What do we link? Apples and oranges? No? Tables and chairs? Dogs and cats? What do we link? We link ourselves, very good, to the Supreme Self, very good. I don't need to talk, right? You all know everything. So in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is describing that like you are also transcendental, you came right to the point that you link ourselves to the Supreme Lord. And that is linking to the permanent. But then in the purport, Srila Prabhupada said there's another kind of linking to something which is temporary. Yes, you're listening very well. So temporary linkages or temporary things we link to, he describes in the purport. Says some examples he gives us. Men and women, yes. Yes, to certain ideas of philosophy, nationalism, altruism, veganism, vegetarianism, anti-maskers, anti-vax, right? Or we can also, so to different ideologies, or the sense objects to the senses, right? And because the sense objects and the senses are temporary, related to this material world or the material body, So Srila Prabhupada says the result is temporary. And what happens if a result is temporary means it doesn't last, so we cannot be happy. And even if we get some happiness, the nature of material happiness is what happens? It is flickering, yes. And we may get a result, and sometimes it's not what we expect, right? It's less than what we expected. And then even if it is what we expected, at some point we reach a satiation point. You know, you can only eat this much pizza. If you eat more than that, what happens? We get sick, right? You can only indulge in so much intoxication before you become stupid, or comatose and pass out, or hurt yourself, right? But with Krishna consciousness, with spiritual linkage, the process is permanent. So therefore, what we experience is ananda. We become very blissful, and the nature of the soul is ananda. So therefore, we feel very satisfied. So right at the onset, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada or Prabhupada's disciples are making this point, that when we talk about yoga, the link has to be between us and something which is permanent, and that is the Supreme Lord and His potencies. Then he describes what is the goal of yoga. To have a fit body. What is the goal of yoga? Is Krishna, yes. The goal of all kinds of yoga is Krishna. The other things we may experience, good health, a fit body, a good physique, flexibility, knowledge, all those are byproducts, but that is not the actual goal. These are like stopping stations on the way to the Supreme Lord. So we should ensure that we don't get stuck on the way, and that we continue to understand or to strive for the highest goal, which is Krishna. And then we make the effort, right, in yoga. We are practitioners, so we try to make the effort. And who gives us the result? Does our effort determine the result? What does the purport say? What determines the result? Is it our effort alone? Krishna determines the effort. Yes, we desire, and Krishna is the one who awards the result. So he's called Yoga Isha. So he's giving us the results of yoga. And so we desire, and then if Krishna is kind, he gives us the result. So we understand it's both. We have to make our effort, and then Krishna has to sanction. In the Bhagavad Gita, you remember the example of the sparrow and the ocean? The eggs of the sparrow? What was that example? Can someone say? Someone can enlighten us? The sparrow and the, yeah. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And the ocean actually takes the eggs inside. Mm-hmm. So the little bird actually gets annoyed, and she says, I will dry you up. And she goes each time with a one peak, one drop, and puts it back.
Yes.
So while doing that, the most powerful Garuda, who is the vehicle for the Vishnu, sees that effort and determination and says, okay, I will go and help my little bird. And then when Garuda comes and orders the ocean that I am going to dry up, ocean gets afraid and they come out and give the eggs back to the little bird.
Yes, thank you. What is the moral of the story? Determination by the living entity, the little bird, and effort. And the effort, so the effort in the determination of the little bird attracted the mercy of?
Sanction of the
Krishna or Krishna's devotee, right? And so when we make the effort, then Krishna recognizes that effort, and then his mercy comes. Do you remember a very famous pastime of Krishna, where this is also very vividly described? We sing about it every day in the month of Kartik, giving you a hint. Damodar Lila. And what happens there? Yeah, it's 2 fingers too short. No matter how many ropes she gets, Mother Yashoda gets from all over, it's always 2 fingers too short. When, in the morning when she dressed Krishna, she was able to put the belt around his waist, no problem. And now she's trying, and she's not able to tie him with rope, all the rope in Gokul. So it's described, like we said, one thing is it's her effort. When Krishna sees that she's sweating, she's really tired, then his mercy descends and he agrees to be bound. So in our yoga practice, it is both. We have to make our effort, and then we have to depend on the mercy of Krishna. So this is an important thing. It's not just on our effort, no? If the philosophy which says that everything depends on our effort is called karma mimamsa. That if you do something, you get the result. God has nothing to do with it. We know very well that is not true from our experience. Sometimes you work so hard, you don't get the result. And some people just sit there and, they just get the result. Okay, so we talked about yoga, and then Srila Prabhupada or Srila Prabhupada's disciples talk about the different kinds of yoga. They mentioned several yogas. We are familiar with some of them. One is karma yoga. Karma yoga means action. Yeah, we do our activities and we either offer the fruits, the results, or we do the activity itself for Krishna's pleasure. Right? And so by that we can link. We are offering the results and we can engage in service to Krishna. Then there is Astanga Yoga. Right? And so in Astanga Yoga, what happens? This is the common, like Hatha Yoga we perform. What is the goal, generally, of the Astanga Yogis? Sorry? They want to get mystic powers. Can you give some examples of mystic powers? 8 kinds of siddhis or mystic powers, like becoming smaller than the smallest. Even the mechanical scientists can do that, right? The airplane flies, not a big deal. Or heavier than the heaviest, right? Or you can pass through very small openings. So all these mystic powers, they are trying to achieve. And the goal is not necessarily to please the Supreme Lord, right? But to withdraw, sensory withdrawal, and then focus on raising our consciousness so they can harness the different potencies of the Lord, and then use it, hopefully, for the better, greater good, not for your own good. Then we have, of course, Jnana Yoga. Jnana Yoga means knowledge, yes, to link to the Lord through transcendental knowledge, right? And the goal of those transcendentalists, what are they trying to achieve? You generally want to merge with the Brahman, right? They want to merge. And then in the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, 4.10, you remember what it says? There are 3 degrees of attachment, material attachment. So karma yogis, vita, raga, bhaya, krodha, right? So raga means attachment. Because of material sense gratification, we become attached to objects of the senses. And we think this is all it is, and we forget our goal, or that's our object, to be happy, be satisfied with temporary happiness. Then, so raga, and then bhaya. Bhaya means fear. What are they afraid of? The impersonalists are afraid of a personal identity, because they have experience in this world. Because I'm a person, I have so many problems, right? We say, Adi Bhautik, Adi Devik, and Adi Atmik. My body is giving so much trouble, my mind is giving so much trouble. Then other living entities are giving me so much trouble. And then the natural forces, sometimes it's too cold, too hot, hurricane, snow. So all these, so if I don't have a body, naturally I don't feel it. So I just become one with the Supreme, and therefore we have to overcome that also. Because so Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantra says, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi, right? So Nirvishesh means to become one, give up our identity. So in that state, because we lose our identity, there is no linking, right? Because in order to link, there has to be 2 people. But if we lose our identity, the chain is that linking doesn't happen. And then krodha means anger. And here they are describing what happens with anger, right? Because someone is practicing and is listening, there's so many philosophies, so many different ways people are saying you can link with the absolute, and they just get so bewildered with all this mental speculation, and they think angry and frustrated. So they want to become, what becomes their goal? I don't want I just want to, everything is zero in the ultimate sense. Because nothing makes sense. So, everything just goes into nothingness, and that is Shunyavad. And Srila Prabhupada's mission from the mantra his pranam mantra, is he came to specifically destroy these two philosophies, Mayavad and Shunyavad, which is like Buddhism, right? So we see this is very prevalent in this world today. When we go out, a lot of people will tell us or speak about some form of Mayavad or Shunyavad. And Srila Prabhupada is relentless in his position against Mayavad. He never lets go an opportunity to talk about the fallacies in Mayavad philosophy. And even everywhere we read, he brings this up because it's so prevalent. Now, the difference between these philosophies and Bhakti Yoga is in Bhakti Yoga, the focus is we want to please Krishna. It's not necessarily that our goal is to please Krishna. It's not that I just want to control my senses, get some mystic powers, or become one, become God, but to actually serve Krishna. And because the nature of the soul is service. And when we serve the Supreme Lord, then we become very happy. That's our constitutional position. We cannot change that. We cannot change our nature. And if we harness this nature in what it is meant for, then we become happy. So therefore, this process of Bhakti Yoga is does not only make us happy, it's also very easy to perform. You don't have to undergo huge austerity. We don't have to read volumes of books and make sense of so much jargon, like so many different ways of saying the same thing. But we can, whatever we have at our disposal, our senses, our mind, we can use it directly in Krishna's service. So Srila Prabhupada in his kindness and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, specifically for this age, has given us the yoga for this age, which is Sankirtan Yoga, right? Sankirtan Jagya. And it is so easy that anyone can perform. We don't have to have any specific qualification for it. Even a child can engage in Sankirtan. Like when we go on Harinam, we see that even children, without knowing it, they dance in Kirtan, right? And then that's the commonest thing, or they are attracted. They listen to the holy name, so they lend their hearing, right? Or sometimes they can chant if they understand, but they participate by dancing, by using their bodies in Krishna's service. So we see it's very, very joyfully performed. And therefore, and because in this age we are we have so many shortcomings, we have so many deficiencies, so Krishna makes it very easy. And I like how they say, our happy situation. It's more contemporary, the use of the word. Our happy situation, our happy position is to be practicing devotional service, which is Bhakti Yoga. So the goal ultimately, of course, they end by saying that the goal, as we said, is Krishna, and to serve him or to reach him. And then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is making this very easy, like we said, by giving us the holy name. The holy name of the Lord, we say, is not different from him. Of course, for someone like me, it takes a long time to understand it, and I still forget, that if we serve the holy name by engaging our senses, by hearing with our ears, speaking with our tongue, touching the beads or the instruments with our hands, we occupy 3 of our senses. So then it's very easy to control the mind with these 3 senses. And so therefore it's very easy to perform. And it's very portable, right? There's no qualification needed. And we are very fortunate that we have this dispensation for this age. So we can engage in this very easy process, even though we are the most unqualified. And in this way, we can re-establish our relationship with Krishna. Jai Jai Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava ki Jai, Shri Shri Giriraj Maharaj ki Jai, Giri Govardhan ki Jai, Radha Giridhari ki Jai, Shri Shri Nitai Chaitanya Chandra Nitai Gaura Chandra ki Jai. So, Yeah, so I think to summarize, we said that yoga means to link with the Supreme. The linkage can be to temporary objects or to permanent or spiritual objects. And if we link to temporary objects, the result is misery because we are covered by ignorance. If we link with Krishna or the Absolute Truth, we become reinstated in our original position of Ananda. Krishna awards us the result, we have to make the effort. And and then the process, there are different processes. You can take the step by step approach by Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga or Astanga Yoga, or you can take the express yoga of Bhakti Yoga. And then we can link with the Supreme by this very easy method and feel very blissful. And we have experience of this every day. So I'll stop here and take questions or comments.
Hare Krishna. I was hoping you could speak more on what are Mayavad and Shunyavad philosophies and what differentiates them.
Okay, so Mayavad philosophy says the ultimate goal of life is that we become one with the Brahman. So in the first canto, right? It's described that the Absolute Truth is known in three features: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So these are all features of the Absolute Truth. Like when they give this example of a train. If someone had never seen a train in the village, and the train comes for the first time, the person on the station who's been waiting all day sees like there's a huge sound, and then there's light. So he goes home and says, a train is light and sound. Other people hang out for a little bit longer and they see, oh, it's not just light and sound, but they are carriages. This thing, they're like different carriages. So they go home and say, a train is light and sound. So the light and sound is like Brahman. Realizing the train as a light and sound. So realizing the Absolute Truth as Brahman. Then the carriages, someone who says, oh, it's not just light and sound, they're also carriages. It's like Paramatma realization, right? Seeing the Lord in the heart. So he has a little more knowledge about the Supreme Absolute Truth. But then someone who hangs out a little longer sees when the train comes to a stop, oh my God, in the compartments there are different people. There are so many other accessories, people are doing different things, So then he understands the train is not just light and sound, it's not just carriages, but it also has a function. There are people in there who are doing certain things, moving from one place to another, making business deals or something. So his understanding is most complete, and that is the realization of Bhagavan. So all are aspects of the Absolute Truth, but one is more complete than the other, right? So a person who performs Jnana Yoga, he understands, or his understanding is that I am spirit soul, and my goal is to understand my spiritual nature, and I am a part of the Supreme, of the Absolute, or the Brahman. So I will become one with God. So Srila Prabhupada says that the Mayavadi wants to kill God, because he wants to become God, right? Because he wants to become one. Whereas the Bhakti Yogi, he wants to serve God. You can only serve, there has to be the servant and the master, right? Without that, there is no serve. And for love, it has to be two, right? You have to have the beloved and the lover. So in the Bhakti Yogis, we say that the highest goal is to have this relationship of love between the Supreme. We don't want to become God, because if we become God, then we just hang in limbo, right? So what happens in the Brahman is that the living entity is aware of his Sat feature, his eternal feature, and cognizant, right? Sat-Chit, and he knows that I'm eternal, and I'm full of knowledge. But he cannot enjoy the bliss aspect, because the bliss only comes with the relationship. So when we have a relationship, then we can exchange love. So therefore, in that Brahman feature, because the soul, who is by nature eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge, he has no engagement. How long can you hang around feeling that, you just like some energy? How long can you actually stay still? So then they get tired of it and they fall to the material planet. And also the process is very difficult. The process of Brahman realization is, like sensory withdrawal, right? We have to stop our senses. It's very difficult to stop the senses. It's easier to engage them, to dovetail them in devotional service. So that's why our process is very easy. We usually give this example of a child, right? Like, everyone knows Dhruva. If you tell Dhruva, stand in a corner because you're a bad boy, how long can he possibly stand in a corner, time out? Not for a few seconds. But if you give him some engagement, okay, you can cut these flowers or you can clean them, he can do it for a long time. So the soul, because it's by nature and active, it's easy, the process is easier. And we are not trying to become God or kill God. Srila Prabhupada says, if we are trying to become God, why should God help the competition? The Mayavadis also sometimes engage in deity worship. If you go to South India, there you see a lot of Mayavadis engage in deity worship. But their process is, I use this form, this is a means for me to understand I am God, and when I get to the top, I kick away the Lord. So it's like you use a ladder to go to the top, and when you get to the top, you don't need the ladder anymore. So that's their philosophy, that they engage in deity worship, but they say when the Lord comes to the material world, he is under the cover of Maya. He doesn't maintain his transcendental form. We say the Lord descends in his same transcendental form. But the Mayavadis say, no, he comes under the control of Maya. Prabhupada says, Krishna is the master of Maya, so how can he ever come under control of Maya? Unless he wants to, in which case that Maya is not Mahamaya, it is Yoga Maya in Vrindavan. He comes under the control of his devotees, because he comes under control of their love, under the control of the internal energy, because he wants to enjoy relationships. But the Mayavadis say, no, when Krishna comes into the world, he has a material body. So that's how they interpret. I think those are some basic differences between their philosophy and ours. Yes, Prabhu.
My understanding is Shunyavad means that there's nothing permanent.
Yes.
That it's all just combinations of matter. And Mayavad is that there is something permanent. It's a homogeneous blob, and the combinations of matter are Maya.
Yes. So Shunyavad, to be finished with Mayavad, and like you said, Shunyavad means everything is zero. This is like the Buddhist philosophy. Everything ultimately is void. There's nothing. So when you become perfect, you realize there's nothing. I can't wrap my mind around it, I'm sorry. But that's the philosophy. So I guess we are, biased, or it's like, I really cannot understand how something can just become nothing. And how can you be happy just becoming not, just you lose your existence. So that's the basic philosophy of the Shunyavadis. Is that okay? Somebody can add more. I just know the basic. Gaura Hari Prabhu.
I just wanted to add one thing. It adds on to the point you were making. I was reading in one of Prabhupada's purports, he describes the Mayavad philosophy, and they actually say that the material energy creates both the jiva and the Vishnu tattva. So their actual understanding is that God is a creation of the material energy in order for the sake of the material, whatever's going on here. And then that also is meant to be transcended and realize that it's just impersonal Brahman. And we are also that. So.
Yeah, the impersonal Brahman is the supreme, yes. Yeah, that's a good way of stating it too. Yeah, that the Vishnu is a product of, created from matter. Yeah, not that he's the master. Or Raghunath Priya Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji, for a nice class. I have a question. So Krishna explained about all the yogic processes in Bhagavad Gita. So Astanga Yoga also is one of the yogic processes. So yoga means linking with God. So if the goal of Ashtanga Yoga is only for self-servient purpose, then why he is calling it as yoga?
In general, in all the yoga processes, there is some kind of austerity or some kind of regulation of our basic tendencies or senses. So in other words, there's an elevation of consciousness. It's because the path is to elevate the consciousness, to go to a higher consciousness away from just, my satisfaction to satisfaction of something which is higher than us. Like the absolute truth, whether you think it's energy, Brahman, or the Supreme Lord.
But Prabhupada explains emphatically that most of the Ashtanga yogic processes that they are only self-servient and it's not achieving God.
Yes.
But Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says these are all yogic processes, and he specifically says yoga means linking with God. So this process, if it doesn't link with God, it should not be called yoga. It's just some kind of physical exercise.
I think Nayanamrita Prabhu wants to respond to you.
We have a perfect example of Kardam Muni. He was a yogi. In a Bhagavad Gita, yes, it is a yoga connecting with Krishna. But the yogis, once they achieve those 8 siddhis, or whatever the siddhis they are after, then they don't further progress, like Kardam Muni did. He was a yogi. He created palace in the air. He traveled all over the space with his yogic power. He expanded himself with yogic power. So he had a yogic power. He was a yogi. But he took one step further. He worshipped Vishnu. He worshipped Krishna. So he really connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's my understanding. Right. I'm sorry, what? No, he achieved those siddhis, then he connected with Krishna for the love. Remember, Krishna came as his son. If it was for his own pleasure, Krishna would not come as his son. But Krishna came as his son. If it was not a connection or the love for God, he would not have taken birth in his family.
So Ashtanga Yoga is not really, cannot say that it is completely yoga. It's a process. Process.
So in the Ramayana, it is described, when Lord Ram went to exile in the forest. So he went to Dandakaranya forest, and before that he was at Chitrakoot, right? Different forests. And he saw many yogis there meditating, right? And these yogis were so amazing, right? They could control some of the elements. They could, they were able to live in harmony with nature, and they had a lot of power, right? But they were still being harassed by the demons. And they asked Ram that you please protect us from these demons. And then Ram is thinking, hey, you have all these mystic powers. You can create weapons. You can, control the elements to some extent. You already know this. Why don't you? Because I see that you have the ability to, kill other living entities, to change your shapes, right? Why don't you use? You already have the ability. Then the sages responded, which was very interesting. They said, our sankalpa or our goal is that we don't use these processes or our siddhis for our own satisfaction. We can only use it for the greater good. We do not use it for our own sense, for my own protection. I mean, such an elevated consciousness, right? I have the ability, but I will still control myself because I will not use it for my own gratification. I mean, how many people can really do this? And therefore, they said, we are please asking you to do what we cannot do. Our code of conduct is we cannot use these siddhis for our own gratification. So maybe that's an angle that we can understand. So they have the idea that, you do greater good or for other living entities, and this way you are helping the Lord. Or you're doing something or serving someone greater than yourself, which is better.
Yeah, I think Vishwamitra also, he has all the powers, but he actually trains Lord Ram to actually kill Ravana, and he could have eliminated Ravana himself,
yes.
but he did not. So,
Yeah.
there are always repercussions. If you have this power, you can misuse it, and then you are actually entangled. So instead, if you do it through the Supreme Lord Himself, then it's purified.
Yes. I think there was another. Is that okay? Samant Prabhu had a question.
Wonderful class, Mataji. I just wanted to add on this discussion that the yoga has a yoga ladder, and different yoga processes like karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, they are different rung of the yoga ladder. But if you say that I wanted to go only to the third rung of the ladder, I don't want to go up, then you'll be just lying there. Although process is part of yoga ladder, but if we don't move up, that's why Krishna says that that Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labte param. This yoga process, karma yoga, jnana yoga, ashtanga yoga, gradual elevation. But the problem is in these three processes, why Krishna explained is because Krishna wanted to lift Arjuna's consciousness from the nursery level. If he explain Bhakti Yoga, he will run away. But he wanted to lift his consciousness. But they are part of the yoga ladder, but they are not the destination. So one person say, I wanted to go second rung. Okay, second, then you will keep sitting there unless you move up. Because you have to gradually come to the Bhakti Yoga, then only. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Shakali Ashant. Why Bhukti Kami is Ashant? Because he wanted to enjoy. So there is a selfishness nature is there. Although he is renouncing some part of the result, but selfishness is there. Bhukti Kami. Then Siddhi Kami, he wants Siddhi. Although austerity, but still selfishness is there. Then Jnani, he wants Jnana, so that he get more follower. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Shakali Ashant. They will remain Ashant unless they elevate to the Mad Bhakti Labte Param. But Krishna Bhakt Nishkam. Because he is selfless service, Nishkam, Ateva Shant. So he is always be peaceful. That's why Krishna in 18th chapter he says that Sarva Dharmam Praparitajye Mamekam Sharanam. Just forget about all whatever explained. Now you just surrender to the Bhakti Yoga because that is a escalator. So choice is us. If you want to take staircase and go to the couple of staircase and sit there whole life, or take the escalator and go up.
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Anything else? Okay. Oh, yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
In the purport, Srila Prabhupada or the disciples of Srila Prabhupada were saying that there's the different things people try to link to, like the link man and woman. And I was wondering how, if that attachment is still there, how does that attachment, like this linking with man and woman, how does that get dovetailed in Krishna's service? Because some devotees would say you just get married, but if someone doesn't want to get married, how does that attachment get dovetailed in Krishna's service?
In general, when we say man or my, when someone says attachment between men and women, usually means sex attraction. And what does Bhagavad Gita say? Krishna says, Kalosmin Bharata Shaba, that his sex life, right, amongst the opulences he describes. So if a man and woman are attached to each other, or they have this desire to enjoy the senses, then by regulating and having a child, and thinking of, considering, first of all, the spouses have to consider that each other, they are servants of Krishna. They're serving the Supreme Lord or Guru, and the spouse should think that my spouse is meant to serve Krishna and I'm assisting him, not that he's meant to serve me. And then, Krishna, this is the correct understanding. My spouse is meant to serve Krishna and I'm assisting him. Srila Prabhupada would marry young men and women and he said, now you are two, so double your service. And then he sent them to open a temple. And his process worked, right? So when in that consciousness, if we think, and then this living entity who has come under my shelter, right, in a family, parents or like the husband, then it's my job, it's my service, my dharma to give them shelter and protection and ensure, because it says in the Shastra, one should not become a father, a husband, a guru, a teacher, unless he can deliver his dependent from the cycle of birth and death. So that's a tall responsibility. Like when we get married, this is the responsibility the husband has, that he has to deliver his dependents. Or we have the parents, mother and father, have to deliver the child from the cycle of birth and death. It's a tall order. So, Jai Shri Shri Radha Radha ki Jai. Shri Giriraj Govardhan ki Jai, Radha Giridhari ki Jai, Gaur Nitai ki Jai. So if in that consciousness, if we work, then that makes for a very successful marriage. Then we have this need to enjoy, but we use everything in Krishna's service. This house is meant as a place for the Lord to reside. So we cook for the Lord, we keep a very good place for Him to reside, and we regulate our services like that. So therefore that can be used in Krishna's service. I also wanted to say, which I kind of forgot, that when we link with the material nature is very unforgiving, right? When we die, today you may be a PhD, but when I take birth again, I have to start from ABC, right? Unforgiving. But Bhakti Yoga, Krishna is so forgiving. If we finish at whatever point we finish, right, you start from there. You don't lose everything. It is your permanent deposit. And when you take another birth, then you can continue from there. So Krishna is very kind, whereas the material nature, Maya, she hangs these carrots, right? But she kicks us in the butt. Very unforgiving. She just has a very good offer. Looks nice on the surface. Did that answer your question?
Just one other thing I was wondering, is there a way that attachment becomes purified without marriage? Because that attachment will still be there for people practicing Bhakti Yoga.
I would have to think of, you can also think of an attachment between like father and son, like mother and a son, or a father and a daughter. There's also attachment there. They are of the opposite sex. And they are also, because we think that this child or my dependent, Krishna has put that person under my shelter, and my job and my service is I have to make sure that this child gets knowledge and gets the opportunity to take on devotional service. That is what I can think of. Does anyone have anything else to add to this? Yeah, my husband has something to say. Or probably Partha Prabhu.
Ideally, we'll get in the mood of serving Radha and Krishna, see Krishna as the enjoyer. And this is what great devotees in our line, we have the goal to be a manjari, a servant. So not everyone has to go through marriage, and if we develop